I'm pretty sure no one will believe my story, but I'm going to write it down anyway because it's all true. It all started on an almost abandoned piece of land in the middle of nowhere. To be completely honest, there were a few cows wandering around, but I don't think they counted. When I think about it, my story actually started about 6 months ago when my wife, Cindy, got a new boss, Alex Goodwin. My name is Don Perkins, and I was one of those unsuspecting husbands. I grew up in a loving family where my mom and dad loved and adored each other. I just assumed that I would have the same marriage. I was crazy about my wife and thought she was crazy about me. Well, at least half of what I believed was correct. My wife enlightened me on which half was wrong. "Dawn," she said over the phone, "I know I'm a coward for not being able to face you, but I've fallen in love with Alex. Now I will live with him. In a few days, I'll send for my things." Then she hung up. I met Cindy in college when she was on a 2-year course to become a paralegal. I was studying a 4-year business administration course with a minor in construction. We dated a few times, but our schedules were such that it didn't work out. Then Cindy graduated from college and moved away. After graduating from college, I started a small construction company. In 7 years, I brought it to a profit of about $300,000 a year. Cindy and I got married 4 years ago, and until tonight, I thought we were happy. Speaking of being unaware, if you looked up the word unsuspecting in the dictionary, you would find a photo of me there. Cindy had that all-American look and could make you believe you were the most important person in the world. I thought we were really happy together. We even talked about children. Of course, I didn't know that Cindy was taking pills and had no intention of ever getting pregnant. The other thing I didn't realize was that Cindy was a gold digger and a good sex hunter. Earning about $300,000 a year allowed us to live quite well. But Cindy always strived for more, and apparently she found it in Alex Goodwin, who was a partner in the largest law firm in the 4-county area. Devastated, I did what any red-blooded American would do whose heart had just been ripped out. I grabbed a bottle of vodka and a 9mm pistol and headed into the wilderness. Oh, don't get me wrong, I loved Cindy with all my heart, but I wasn't going to kill myself. So why did I take the gun? Fair question. You see, in my foggy brain, I thought I would call Cindy and tell her I was devastated that she was gone, and then shoot the gun next to the phone. I thought it would scare her to death, and I thought it was funny. Unfortunately, there was no mobile reception where I was staying. That summed up my day well. Anyway, I was just sitting there when I saw 2 red lights in the sky. At first, I thought they were just planes flying overhead, but then they began to get closer. Suddenly, I realized that these were 2 fireballs. Finally, they crashed into the far end of the field across the road from me. The explosion lifted the front of the car a couple of feet off the ground. What follows is rather vague due to the vodka he drank. Vodka, this was another half-baked plan of mine. My intention was to drink myself into oblivion and throw up in the car. It was Cindy's car, so I thought she could live with a smell. The smell of vomit is really hard to remove from a car, but I couldn't do it. Like I said, everything was a little blurry. But I remember getting out of the car and walking across the road. As I came closer, it seemed to me that 2 people were crawling out of 2 craters left by the fall. One of them was naked, and the other was wearing what looked like a hazmat suit. The man in the protective suit shot at something, I think. I remember a small explosion that occurred 5 meters to my left. The explosion scared me and made me angry because it broke my vodka bottle. I probably should have been more scared, but the alcohol does its job. In any case, I fired the pistol twice into the protective suit. I must have hit something because the suit flashed with a bright light and disappeared. It scared the crap out of me because I thought I had killed someone. Okay, I admit, my first instinct was to run as fast as possible. But when I got to the car, I started thinking about the naked man. I couldn't just leave him there, and as it turned out, I was very glad that I didn't leave. When I returned to the naked man, he seemed badly burned. I was pretty sure it was the burned guy. He looked very bad. His skin was red and raw. Either way, I had to take him to the hospital, and then he was going to run away, with the hope that no one will know who I am. When I approached him, he shouted something incomprehensible. When I tried to help him get up, he pushed my hand away. He then placed his index finger on my forehead. I felt dizzy for a few seconds, and I know you'll think I'm crazy, but my brain felt like it was really itching. Sometimes he still itches. In the midst of incomprehensible words, he began to speak in English. Damn cousin tried to finish me off. He couldn't just let me serve my exile. I was stunned and could only say, "So your cousin tried to kill you." Then he seemed to notice me. "Who the hell are you?" "My name is Don Perkins, and I'm going to take you to the hospital." "I don't want to go to some damn hospital," he replied sharply. "What is this anyway?" I assumed the accident had damaged this guy's brains, so I decided to play his game. A hospital is a place where the sick or injured are cared for. You're hurt, so I'll take you to the hospital. "I'm fine," he insisted, standing up. "Take me to your home." When he stood up, I was shocked to see short blonde hair appear on his head. His face looked completely normal, even his nose looked normal. I decided it was vodka, or I was going crazy. He started to walk away, but then looked back. "Are you coming, idiot?" I would have just driven away and left that idiot in the field, but he saw my face, and I was worried that there would be an investigation into the other guy's death. So I decided to take him with me until I figured out what he was going to do. I don't know what I was thinking. I wasn't going to kill him if he wanted to go to the police. No matter how I analyzed my situation, it seemed like I was in shit no matter what I did. Somehow I got us home without getting caught, and once I got him settled in the kitchen, I found him a pair of pants and a sweater. Then he made coffee. Over the next hour, this person told me the most incredible story. At first I listened with half an ear because I was more worried about my problem that I could become a murderer. But as his story unfolded, I had no choice but to pay attention. My guest, whom I was sure was crazy, claimed that he had been exiled to this planet. He comes from a planet 647,000 light-years away. According to him, on his home planet, the creatures were energy beings. He explained that he lost a power struggle to his cousin and was exiled to this planet. This meant that he had to take on the physical form of the species inhabiting this planet. I held the gun tightly because I thought this guy could be dangerous. But everything changed when I challenged him. I decided that he was talking nonsense and, perhaps, had escaped from some kind of mental hospital. "This is all very interesting," I finally interrupted him. "But I think it's time for you to leave. Where can I take you?" He looked at me annoyed and then sighed. "Don't be a coward. Why don't you just say it straight? Obviously a dumbass like you doesn't believe me. What can I do to convince you?" "It's okay," I said, standing up and tightening my grip on the gun. "Just tell me where to take you." The next thing I remember is that I was pinned to the ceiling. Then my guest picked up a chair and sat me down on it. Now I was sitting on a chair in the air in my kitchen. I had just experienced the moment of truth, and I was ready to believe everything he told me. When he was satisfied that I was convinced enough, he returned me to the floor. I just sat there and looked at him while he smirked. Then his stomach growled, and he jumped to his feet, exclaiming, "This damn body is defective." "No, it's not defective," I said with a laugh. "You're probably just hungry. I'll make you something to eat." "Eat?" The man seemed confused for a second, then his eyes lit up. "Yes, sure. Your species needs food throughout the day. What a damn waste of time." I cooked bacon and scrambled eggs for him. However, it was the cup of coffee that completely delighted him. I warned him that it was hot and to be careful, but he still swallowed it in one gulp. Then his eyes opened wide, and I was sure he had burned his throat. But that was not the point. It turned out that the caffeine in the coffee stimulated pleasure in his brain. After that, he was not interested in food, he only wanted coffee. After he drank a pot of coffee, he didn't get the same excitement, so he decided to eat what I made. After he had eaten a dozen eggs, a pound of bacon, half a loaf of bread, and another pot of coffee, my guest began to yawn. However, during the hour he spent eating large quantities of food, he explained how he ended up in his current situation. In a confusing exchange, my guest explained that he had lost some kind of power struggle for leadership of his home planet to the equivalent of a cousin. But that wasn't exactly what one would call a cousin. After half an hour of trying to explain it to me, I told him to forget about it, we'll just call him cousin. And as far as I understand, such power struggles happen all the time, and losing in such a competition meant exile to a remote part of their planet for a year. However, his cousin exiled him to a primitive planet for 5 years, and then he sent one of his assistants to reduce his energy to a level where he could not return home. When I asked him where he was from and what his name was, he said I would never be able to pronounce either, and he was right. However, after a series of whistles, clicks, and guttural sounds, I heard what sounded like Izzy at the end of his name. So I told him I would call him Izzy. He seemed very pleased with this. From his point of view, it was difficult for him to understand what could please a person. Izzy then explained that he learned my language by studying my brain. This calmed me down. I didn't like my brain itching. Anyway, I asked him why he knew so little about so many other things. His answer was quite arrogant. He said that our brains are so inefficient and chaotic that searching for information in this way is time-consuming and nauseating. Throughout our conversation, his answers were filled with profanity. It started to get on my nerves. "Why do you swear so much when you talk?" I finally asked him after he said for the 5th time that the coffee was damn great. Izzy looked at me in surprise. "These words dominated your mind. And now that you mention it, who is this damn bitch that overshadows everything else in your limited brain?" I spent about 5 minutes telling Izzy the short version of how my wife left for her boss. Apparently, he didn't like my explanation. I later learned that his species has no emotions and reproduces asexually, and he calls the Earth a primitive planet. A look of horror and disgust suddenly appeared on Izzy's face. "Your species still has 2 sexes, and you copulate to reproduce, don't you?" "What's bad about it?" I asked in response. "Gatakamish wormholes, when I return home, I will drain most of the life force from my cousin, and then banish him to the slug planet." I decided not to ask further about the slugs. Plus, Izzy was having a hard time keeping his eyes open, so I suggested that we go to bed. "I forgot about that," Izzy said, shaking his head. "Your species spends a third of your miserable life sleeping." Having settled Izzy in the spare room, I couldn't sleep for a long time, trying to figure out what to do with this crazy guest. I also continued to be bothered by the death of his cousin's assistant. But around 7 in the morning, when I finally fell asleep, Izzy burst into my room in a panic. "My body is defective," he said, shaking me. "What are you talking about?" I asked, waking up. "My damn cousin put me in a defective body," he said, starting to pace around the room. "What is the defect in your body?" I asked, not hiding my irritation. "I'm leaking in the front and losing gases in the back," he said, almost panicking. I looked at him and saw that the front of his pajama pants was wet. At that moment, I burst into hysterical laughter. Izzy didn't like this, and when I saw his face turn red with anger, I stopped. "Your body is not defective," I said quickly. "You just wet yourself. This is fine. Well, it shouldn't be in your pants, but your body is just eliminating waste." "Waste? Waste? Why am I excreting waste? It's just normal. What the body cannot use as food, it excretes as waste," I tried to explain. "Incredible," Izzy shouted. "This planet is even more primitive than I thought." "Yes, I understand. We are primitive creatures." He began to irritate me again. "In the future, if you feel like you're going to leak more fluid from that thing between your legs, use the toilet. Please pee in it." Izzy rushed across the hallway to the bathroom. A minute later, I heard him peeing in the toilet, and then a burst of laughter. "It was really nice," he said when he returned. Yes, that's right. I decided to tell him the bad news right away to avoid a big mess. "You will also be releasing solid waste. Please do this in the toilet too." An expression of uncertainty appeared on his face. "Will it come out of your mouth? If so, how does it taste?" "No," I shook my head. It won't come out of your mouth, and to save you the unpleasant experience, don't even think about tasting it. It will come out of the back of your body. Izzy's face suddenly lit up with excitement. Does this feel good? I nodded. There's nothing better than sitting on the toilet and having a good pee in the morning. With that, Izzy rushed back into the bathroom, and I heard the sounds of a man relieving himself. Only Izzy laughed. At this point, I decided it would be best to teach him how to use toilet paper right away. I didn't want him to smell all day. At this point, I wasn't sure if I'd be able to get him into the shower soon. At breakfast, I learned that Izzy likes Captain Crunch and Trix cereal. He ate a box of each. Then Izzy started asking me a bunch of questions about life on Earth. I answered all his questions until he started asking about Cindy and her boss Alex. Then I became somewhat defensive. This only made Izzy more curious. He eventually demanded to meet with both of them. I refused. "Why can't I meet them?" he complained. "They are clearly causing you a lot of pain. Don't you want this to stop?" Now Izzy had my full attention, and I was ready to consider meeting them. But first I wanted to know what my alien visitor was talking about. "How are you going to stop them hurting me?" I asked, and quickly added, "You can't kill them if that's what you mean." "Kill? Who said anything about bloody murder?" Izzy said, somewhat taken aback. "We cannot knowingly kill another living being. It is part of our core essence. If one of mine deliberately kills another being, that act will end with its own existence." "What about your cousin's assistant? I killed him." "Will this cause you problems?" Izzy snorted. "You didn't kill him. You scared him to death. He simply dissipated his energy to escape." "My memory is a little fuzzy about last night," I said skeptically. "However, I am confident that I destroyed the one who was pursuing you. It seemed to explode when I shot it. Besides, why did he try to kill me?" Izzy chuckled. "You couldn't kill one of mine even if you dropped one of your nuclear bombs on us. We are pure energy. The suit he wore was simply so that he wouldn't have to go through decontamination. Now he is returning to our home planet. However, without his interdimensional ship, he will have to search for the nearest wormhole. It will take him 4 or 5 Earth years to get home. And he didn't try to kill you. He was just trying to scare you." I digested this for a few minutes and then returned to the topic of Cindy and Alex. "So again, how are you going to stop them hurting me?" A sinister smile appeared on Izzy's face. "It depends on what you want to do. I can change your feelings for your wife. I can change her feelings for you. Or I can change the feelings of the man who stole your wife." "Can you really do this?" I asked because it seemed too good to be true. "Yes, I can, but I won't do anything until I've looked through their minds. I'm not going to spoil them if they don't deserve it." Somewhat disappointed, I nodded. I had to admit that I was only looking at everything from my point of view. However, Cindy swore to be faithful to me and broke that vow. In my opinion, it would have been a completely different matter if she had simply come to me and asked for a divorce. But Cindy didn't do it. Instead, she decided to cheat on me. As for the idiot Alex, he got involved with a married woman. Only the lowest brat does such a thing. After explaining my feelings about this, I allowed Izzy to view my memories of my relationship with my wife directly from my brain. After that, at Izzy's suggestion, I arranged a meeting with Cindy and Alex under the pretext of discussing our separation. I told Izzy he could pretend to be my lawyer. Lawyers were a concept Izzy didn't understand. When I explained what they were, he immediately disliked them. "They sound like damn leeches." "You understand the concept of a lawyer very well," I said with a smile. I made an appointment for lunch with Alex and Cindy. Then I took Izzy shopping for new clothes. He insisted on driving, which I strongly objected to. However, he was very persistent and informed me that he had mastered all forms of interdimensional travel. For him, controlling an earthly machine was child's play. But after he ran over my rose bushes and knocked over my mailbox, he let me drive. The thought of paying for things before leaving the store was completely foreign to Izzy. It took a lot of persuasion and about $300 on a credit card to buy all the shit Izzy wanted before I could dress him. On the way to the restaurant, Izzy explained that he just needed to touch their skin to get the information he needed. It would be faster if he could touch their foreheads, but I explained that this was not socially acceptable. We also agreed that once Izzy had all the information he needed, he would tell me which of the three options would be acceptable. Izzy said that, in the worst-case scenario, he would be willing to eliminate my love for Cindy completely. As for whether he will allow me to take revenge on these two, it will depend on whether they deserve it or not. Surprisingly, revenge was a concept that Izzy said his people were very familiar with. Honor and respect were paramount. If someone had offended someone, elaborate revenge schemes would be developed to punish the culprit. And because there were so many different actions, thoughts, or gestures that could be considered an insult, Izzy said that his people spent an enormous amount of time devising ways to take revenge. After hearing this description of his people, I couldn't help but think that this supposedly advanced civilization was clearly wasting a lot of time on nonsense. Of course, I kept this opinion to myself. When we arrived at the restaurant, Cindy and Alex were already seated in the booth. They hugged and kissed, not paying attention to those around them. This caused a lot of emotions in me, and my anger began to rise to the surface. Izzy must have realized this because he stopped me. Keep your damn mood under control. If you corrupt their minds with your bullshit anger, I may not get accurate data, and I may not be able to make the changes I want at this time, so don't be a jerk. No matter how bad his speech was, it achieved its goal. I hid my displeasure and put on a fake smile. Cindy, Alex, I said calmly, this is my lawyer, Mr. John Smith. I'm glad we can sit down and work things out in a reasonable way. Izzy shook their hands, and we sat down in the booth across from them. I then explained that I was willing to split everything we earned during our marriage $5,050. We will sell the house and split the proceeds. Since there are no children, there will be no child support. Alex just grinned at me. I don't think so. There will definitely be alimony. And Cindy wants half of your company and half of your 401k. She also wants all the china and china cabinet. I have prepared a list of our demands. Alex handed the list to Izzy, who glanced at him. He then smiled at me and looked back at Cindy and Alex. Obviously, this idiot didn't tell me the whole story. Let me consult with him for a few minutes, and I am confident that we can meet your requirements. Cindy giggled, and Alex just grinned at me. I wanted to knock his teeth out right then and there, but Izzy grabbed my arm and pulled me aside. For a few minutes, I wasn't sure if Izzy was going to do anything for me. But as soon as we sat down at another table, he calmed my fears. I immediately didn't like that damn idiot Alex, and your wife is a fucking bitch. She slept with almost everyone throughout the years of your marriage. This news made me get out of my chair. I was going to go over and beat up Cindy and the asshole, but Izzy grabbed my hand. What are you, a damn moron? He asked. Which part of don't be a jerk didn't you understand? Do you want revenge or not? I sat back down with a feeling of shame. I want revenge more than anything. Great, me too. Izzy's eyes sparkled with anticipation. Now, what do you want me to do? As I already explained, I doubted that Izzy could do what he said. I didn't feel any change after he touched my forehead, but I've seen Izzy do too many amazing things to doubt him now. So I sat back and tried to figure out what exactly I wanted, and then it dawned on me. First, I want Cindy to fall madly in love with me, I said with a smile. I want her to crawl home, begging me to take her back. Then, when I'm done having her, I'll let her feel what it's like to be abandoned. Oh, I like the way you think, Izzy said with pleasure. What about the asshole? Oh yeah, I have something special for Alex, I said, rubbing my hands together. He considers himself such a macho and womanizer. First, I want him to find Cindy disgusting. So much so that he either transferred her somewhere else or fired her. They also have a young lawyer who likes men. I want Alex to fall madly in love with him. Since the concept of sex as it exists here on Earth was foreign to Izzy, I had to explain to him what it meant to love men. Izzy's eyes widened as he finally realized what I wanted to do to Alex. He couldn't help but chuckle. You'd be proud of my only parent if you knew who the hell it is. With our plan in place, we returned to Cindy and Alex's table. Izzy explained that we agreed to the terms Alex laid out. After a few insults about my courage, we all shook hands and left. After leaving the restaurant, I explained to Izzy that I needed to check on things in the office to make sure several projects were going according to plan. Making a living was another concept Izzy didn't understand. To him, it seemed like a damn waste of time. So I explained that if he wanted me to keep buying coffee and Cap'n Crunch, I needed money, and in order to get paid, I have to make sure that all my construction projects are completed on time and on budget. On the way to the office, I asked, "How long will it take for these new feelings to take effect?" "You will begin to notice changes within a few hours, and by tomorrow morning the process will be complete." A quick review of the reports and a few phone calls confirmed that all 6 of my projects were progressing well. After that, I decided to celebrate with Izzy. I was also interested to know his reaction to naked women, so I took him to a nightclub that offered full service for a reasonable fee. I discovered 2 things about Izzy at the nightclub. Firstly, alcohol had no effect on him at all. However, he really liked the taste of rum. So instead of ordering him a glass, I bought him the whole bottle. The girls and bartenders looked at him in amazement as he drank it in one gulp without experiencing any effect. As I slowly slipped my whiskey and soda, Izzy grabbed my hand and pointed it between my legs. I immediately noticed that he was excited. "No, your body is not defective," I said with a grin. "In fact, I would say it is operating at peak efficiency." "But how can I remove it?" he asked, starting to finger himself. "Well, there are 3 ways to handle this," I said as I saw one of the dancers take off her top. She had magnificent breasts. "You can wait, and it will go away eventually. You can help yourself. Or you can have sex with a woman. Of the 3, I definitely recommend the 3rd option. Are you interested?" "Fucking sure." He immediately began unbuttoning his pants. "Don't be so impatient," I said, moving his hands away from his pants. "I have to pay first." "This whole concept of payment is just a pain in the ass," Izzy grumbled. I didn't know how Izzy would react to the whole sex process, so I only paid for 1 girl. However, I told the guy who took the money that if Izzy wanted another girl, he should just take the money from me. After 5 girls, I decided that Izzy was enough for today. He was disappointed, but agreed to leave. I spent the rest of the day showing Izzy around the city and explaining how everything worked. Of course, we stopped at the grocery store to buy more coffee, Cap'n Crunch, tricks, and whatever else Izzy was interested in. By the time I brought him home that night, he was still full of excitement. As we sat drinking coffee, I suddenly realized that I no longer cared about Cindy. It was like the first time I met her. I thought she was attractive and wanted to get to know her better. But other than that, nothing. The intense pain that was burning me from the inside disappeared. The next morning, after a box of tricks, a pot of coffee, and a large chocolate bar, I managed to convince Izzy to take a shower. He thought it was funny up to a certain point. I didn't tell him that he shouldn't eat soap. So sue me if you want, it's a small town, not much to do. He was still trying to get rid of the taste of soap in his mouth when I pushed him into the car and drove to Cindy's office. I typed up an agreement that included all the demands that Alex was making on Cindy's behalf. When we entered the law firm, I didn't notice Cindy in her usual place, and Alex's office door was closed. I looked at Izzy with a questioning look. He, in turn, shrugged. I couldn't help but wonder if that revenge part had worked. "Marge, is Cindy here?" I asked the secretary. Marge looked around to make sure no one could hear her. "Dawn, she's in the dining room. I'm sorry to hear that you are breaking up. I think she's starting to doubt her decision. In any case, Alex announced that he was transferring her to another office. I don't know what that means." "Do you mind if I stop by and give her these documents?" I insisted. "Certainly," Marge replied, looking around again. "All partners, except Alex, are now out of the office, and he's in his office with Roger, one of the new lawyers, and this is also strange." Why? I asked, unable to contain my smile. Roger loves men, and Alex resisted hiring him with all his might. Izzy was now chuckling quietly and rubbing his hands. Just great. I left Izzy in the reception area and headed to the dining room. Cindy sat there, crying bitterly, surrounded by 3 other women. "Excuse me, Cindy," I knocked on the door frame. "I have some documents for you." Cindy raised her head and ran into my arms. Then, choking on words, she said, "Oh, Dawn, forgive me. Can you forgive me? I understand now that you are the only one I have ever loved. Is there a chance that we can make things right?" I was almost tempted to tell her right there that it was over between us, but I decided it would be more fun to bring her home. I decided that a few weeks of sex before quitting would be quite fun. Yes, I was an asshole, but as Izzy would say, go to hell. I was going to enjoy the sex and let Cindy feel the pain she had caused me. As I pulled her away from the other women, I noticed the look on their faces. They looked dreamy, as if they had just witnessed some romantic moment. Nowadays, many women like to think that they are better than men, but this is not true. They're just different. I think the most striking difference is in the way men and women perceive sex. Most women want some kind of emotional connection with a guy, plus a million other conditions, before they agree to have sex. For guys, it's enough for a girl to just come naked with 6 bottles of beer. And even beer is optional. When Cindy and I arrived at the main office, it was in complete chaos. I saw Izzy at Alex's office door, and it looked like he opened it. There, in all his glory, Roger had sex with Alex. I have to admit, this surprised me. With the office in complete disarray, Cindy, Izzy, and I left. When we got home, Cindy dragged me into our bedroom. I stood up and took off my clothes. At that moment, I noticed Izzy sitting in a chair in the corner of the room. I felt a little awkward at first, but then I thought, to hell with it, if he wants to watch, he deserves it. As I pulled away from Cindy, I saw Izzy standing a couple of feet from the bed. He rubbed his hands and opened his eyes wide. That was incredible. Izzy didn't move, but his breathing quickened. I understood what he wanted. At first I wanted to refuse him, because she is mine. But then I realized that I had no feelings for Cindy. Now she's just good sex. "Do you want to try?" I asked Izzy. He immediately started nodding his head. "Cindy," I told my soon-to-be ex-wife, "Izzy wants you. You'll do this for me, right?" I noticed that she didn't really want to have sex with Izzy. "Do you really want me to handle the check with your friend?" "This will make me so happy," I lied slightly. Now it was my turn to watch. I have to admit that considering Izzy had never had sex before yesterday, he did pretty well. Over the next 3 weeks, I had sex with Cindy every morning and every evening. We did everything possible between a man and a woman. Strangely, Izzy didn't want anything to do with Cindy after the first time. When I asked him about it, he explained that she was such a selfish bitch with such negative energy that he didn't feel comfortable being around her. At the end of the 3rd week, Izzy and I decided to go on a trip. By then, I had sold my construction company and put the money in the bank. I didn't get what it was worth, but Izzy said not to worry because he would make me a lot of money. On Monday morning, 3 weeks later, I told Cindy that I was leaving her. "Cindy, remember when you called me and told me you were leaving for Alex?" I asked her while she was preparing breakfast. She lowered her head and muttered how sorry she was. "Well, you said you didn't have the courage to face me. But you see, I have the courage to meet you. Cindy, I'm leaving you, and here are the divorce papers. I sold the business and split everything 5,050. Here's a cashier's check for your share. Izzy and I are going on a trip. I wish you a good life." We had already loaded my car, but it was very difficult to leave the house. Cindy lost control and fell to her knees, begging. She grabbed my leg and didn't let go. She kept screaming, "Don't leave me. I love you so much." I finally had to lie to her. I told her I would put the divorce on hold, but I needed time to myself. She finally let go, and I quickly left. Once on the road, I asked Izzy where we were going. "To Vegas, baby. We're going to fucking Las Vegas." I don't have a problem with that, I told him, and then asked, but why? Two reasons. Firstly, there are games of chance there that will not be gambling for us. Secondly, there is a lot of easy sex there. We spent 2 weeks in Las Vegas, and I'm sure the casinos were glad we left. We won almost $8 million from the casino, and they did it in such a way that they couldn't complain. If you play blackjack and start winning, the casino accuses you of card counting. So we started playing roulette. But we didn't choose numbers, we just bet on red or black. Then we bet on even or odd. After we cashed out our winnings and deposited the money in the bank, the casino gave us a suite for free. They desperately wanted us to stay so they could get their money back. The suite was gorgeous, and while I was fixing myself a drink, Izzy decided to explore. The next day, Izzy wanted to go to the girls of Easy Virtue. I must admit that I was curious too. On the way to the chicken coop, Izzy explained what he was going to do. As the girls pass in front of us, Izzy will touch each girl's forehead and instill a desire in them so that they will feel an overwhelming desire to be with one of us when we call. As Izzy explained, we will have to pay for the first time, but after that we will have a choice for free. Like I said, we left Vegas with about $8 million. I asked him why we didn't stay there and continue winning money. He said that what he was doing to allow us to win was draining his energy too much. So we continued traveling, stopping wherever something caught Izzy's curiosity. Why he wanted to stop and look at the largest ball of thread in the world is unclear to me. But our tour of Area 51 was exciting. I don't know how Izzy did it, but he did it. Oh, in case you were wondering, they actually have alien spaceships and even preserved aliens. Izzy says that the aliens stored there are all lower species. I think for Izzy, all creatures are inferior to his people. As the trip progressed, Izzy told me that he had heard some things about Wall Street, but wanted to learn more. I explained that this is a place where you can buy shares of companies. The value of companies can rise or fall depending on their success or the mood of the economy. When I told him it was like gambling but safer, he became very interested. After that, he started reading huge amounts of information about Wall Street and all the ways to make money. A few weeks later, he had me stop in St. Louis and open an account with an Edward Jones representative. When I asked him why Edward Jones, he said he liked the name. After that, he began buying and selling shares. He began shorting stocks and buying commodities. Our $8 million grew to almost $80 million. We were both tired from traveling, so we rented a place in my hometown to recuperate before our next trip. 3 days after we settled in, we were on our way to dinner when we were stopped by two men in ill-fitting suits. I'd never seen them, but Izzy recognized them. They were from his home planet. They wanted to talk to him alone. One thing you can say about Izzy, he was almost always in a good mood. He smiled often. Izzy admitted to me once that he was furious when he was exiled to this planet. Now he hoped that his cousin would simply forget about him. According to Izzy, he was having the best damn time of his life. When Izzy returned from talking with the two men, his shoulders were slumped and there were tears in his eyes. I've never seen him cry. What's happened? Did someone die? I asked. No, but my cousin was overthrown, he answered sadly. My exile has been cancelled. Are you going home? I asked, concerned that I might lose my partner. I have no choice, he explained. When my cousin was overthrown, I became the new ruler of my planet. Oh, I said quietly, then you'll have to leave. I'll miss you. I have 24 hours to prepare, and then they will come to accompany me home, Izzy said with a sigh. A moment later, his smile returned. Since I only have a day left, let's make it awesome. However, Izzy's plan for an amazing day didn't include anything I expected. Instead of walking around the city, which I didn't really want to do, Izzy decided to spend time wandering around the city and making memories. We spent the day talking about our travels and adventures. It seemed that Izzy wanted to relive them again. In fact, it turned out to be a very amazing day. When the two men returned, Izzy asked permission to say goodbye in private. They agreed and waited outside while Izzy and I sat in the kitchen of our rental home, sharing our last cup of coffee. "Before I go," Izzy said hesitantly, "I have a confession and an apology." Izzy making a confession was nothing new. He did this often. Most of them concerned new things Izzy discovered about Earth or its people. But Izzy apologizing was completely new. I don't remember him ever doing this. He was a man who always went ahead, no matter the consequences. "Apology? This is something new," I said with a grin, trying to diffuse the situation. Izzy took a deep breath and began. "When I first arrived on this planet and heard you talk about love, I thought it was a waste of time. And when I saw how your ex-wife treated you, I was even more convinced that love is a fiction. However, in the almost 4 years that I spent here, I realized that I was completely wrong. Your people are born, live a pitifully short life, and then die. And no matter what you do throughout your life, in the end, all that matters is who you loved and who loved you. I envy you." There was an awkward pause, and tears filled Izzy's eyes. I decided that if anyone needed a hug, it was Izzy, so I reached out and gave him a big hug. He returned the hug, but then whispered in my ear, "Remember, my name is not Alex." I laughed and let him go. "What's the excuse?" I finally asked. "Yeah, about that." He clearly felt awkward, admitting his mistake. "You didn't ask for this, but I decided you needed it. When I changed your feelings for your ex-wife, I introduced a command that made it impossible for you to fall in love with any woman. Now I understand that I was wrong. I'd like to fix this before I go." I was surprised to learn that Izzy did this, but I realized that I didn't have any feelings for anyone when I thought back on our time together. I thoroughly enjoyed sex with women, but felt no feelings other than wanting them to satisfy me. Then it dawned on me. Lately, I've been feeling more and more unhappy, let down. No doubt my inability to love was part of it. Izzy reached out and touched my forehead. Then he smiled and stepped back. "It's time to go, Sovereign," said one of the two men as he re-entered the house. "Will I ever see you again?" I asked, realizing that I really loved this strange friend. He looked over his shoulder at the two men who were waiting for him. Then he said in a loud voice, "No, that would be impossible." Then he winked and smiled at me. Revenge is a funny thing. It's rare that you achieve the results you expect. This was the case with Cindy and Alex. If I had known about Cindy's reputation, I would never have married her. Even though she was a cheater and a bitch, we had our good times and the sex was always great. Because of Izzy's command, Cindy was forced to live by loving me. At least that's what I think. I never thought to ask Izzy if his commands stopped working. Anyway, because Cindy is who she is, and because she couldn't be with me, she became a bitch. Most of you probably think that I took revenge on her by reducing her to the level of an accessible girl. In fact, Cindy has always been like this. The only difference is that instead of receiving money from her unsuspecting husband, she receives money from her clients. Alex left the company he worked for. This was not an amicable parting. Apparently, the company had a moral clause, so Alex suffered both physically and financially. But when Alex left the firm, he took Roger with him. As far as I understand, they are doing well. However, it wasn't all smooth sailing for Alex. I learned that at some point Roger left him and Alex tried to commit suicide. Luckily, she and Roger made up and eventually got married. Last I heard, they were trying to adopt a child. When Izzy first offered to help me get revenge on Cindy and Alex, I was excited and happy. But as you can see, everything didn't turn out the way I expected. All these things, plus Izzy's disappearance, made me depressed. I tried to continue traveling, which was so fun in the past. But without Izzy, they quickly became boring. The money Izzy made for us was now worth over $100 million, so I didn't have to work. But I realized that I need to work. I realized that I was so unhappy because I had no purpose in life. So I went back to what I knew best: construction. However, before starting a new construction company, I invested most of the money Izzy made into various charities. I, of course, kept the $3 million for myself. I may be unsuspecting, but I'm not a complete idiot. Anyway, when that was done, I started a new construction company near Dallas. That was 3 years ago, and today I have contracts for projects worth $40 million. Three of these contracts are for the construction of parts of the southern wall of the United States. A country that does not protect its borders is not a country, it's just territory. One of the first people I hired was a sweet girl named Katie Williams. She has bright red hair and sparkling green eyes. She's a little overweight, but her smile can light up a dark room. We got married a year ago, and I couldn't be happier. I didn't tell Katie about Izzy because I knew she would never believe me. Some nights I lie in bed and wonder what would happen if Izzy came back. One thing I know for sure, I am not going to share my wife with him. He will have to find his own woman.